All right, let's get to the tight ends. The guys at the top of our rankings: Travis Kelsey, Darren Waller, and Mark Andrews. Will, who do you have at the top?
That is the same group that I have.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, Sean, is that how you had them ranked?
What was it? Kittle, Kelsey, Kittle, and Andrews?
No,
Kelsey,
Waller, and Andrews.
Oh, well, I have Kittle up there for now, but yeah, I think Waller, if Kittle is out, Waller would probably be my number 3. But right now I have Andrews number 2.
Yeah, Raybon, how do you have them ranked? I mean, I'll be honest. I have Waller number 1 right now, which is probably aggressive, but given that he has a 39% target share, which that number has to come down, like it must come down. But even if it comes down, what does it come down to? Like 26? I mean, like he's the heart of that Las Vegas passing offense. I think he continues to get targeted at a pretty high rate. And if that's the case, I have him number 1, but where do you have him?
I have him number 3. I also don't think George Kittle will play. I may be wrong, but I was reading about Kyle Shanahan, and they said that turf in MetLife is really concerning, and they're playing their second straight week on that turf.
They're not putting him out. They're not putting him out there.
Yeah, and
they're
so
not going to risk losing Kittle for the season by putting him out on that crap turf.
Yeah, so ESPN has actually said, quoted Shanahan as saying we're going to be careful with our guys that are already hurt on that turf. So I'm just I don't even have him ranked right now. So I have Travis Kelsey number 1. Baltimore's really tough at the corner position. They play tight ends well too, but I think Kelsey's going to be who he is. He's got the quarterback for it. And then Andrews, I still got to go number 2. Kansas City, Steve Spagnuolo, doing a great job. L'Jarius Sneed, the cornerback, has allowed, I don't even think he's about 100 yards on 12 targets. He's already got 2 picks. They funnel the football away from receivers kind of on purpose. They like to get you to target, tight ends and backs and things like that. So I think Andrews in a potential shootout has to be number 2. And then Waller's number 3. Friedman, I'm with you on the usage is there. He actually popped as my number 2 tight end last week, and I think I lowered him, which was a mistake. But it worries me against the Patriots because going back to even last year, they were lights out against tight ends. And even with those corners, which you wouldn't expect, you would expect the ball to kind of funnel to tight ends last year. It didn't. And then this year, they've continued to just not allow production to the tight end position. Mike Gaseki had a slow game. Greg Olsen had Russell Wilson's only blemish of the season, essentially, by dropping a pass into the lap of the defense for his pick 6. And then Russell Wilson didn't even look at his tight ends the rest of the game. I mean, Russell Wilson went completely nuclear without even looking at his tight end. So New England doing a good job against tight ends. This probably could be the game where Waller takes a little bit of a step back. But I still have him number 3 because the volume is just too strong.
Yeah, I hear you there on Waller and the matchup. It is tough. I would just say like Waller is different than a lot of tight ends that the Patriots have gone against. One thing to your point about Andrews, and we will need to kind of keep an eye on this. Tyron Matthew, people have talked in the past about him playing sort of this safety slot cornerback hybrid role. I think that's been a little bit overblown, but like last week, he literally did play slot corner. And if that happens again, then that means that he won't be matching up against Mark Andrews, which I think would be a big check mark in favor of Andrews and what he could do against the Chiefs in week 3. So something to keep an eye on. Will,
sorry, real quick. So was Matthews in the healthy for the last matchup against them last year, like when they played in week 3? Because Andrews actually did have a pretty bad game, just 3 catches for 15 yards on 7 targets. So that's a really great point.
Yeah, I think Matthew was the guy matched up against him in week 3 last year. So if he's not matched up against, but I'm also thinking like they know that Mark Andrews is an important part of that passing offense. They might just shift Matthew back to strong safety for this game. Will, who are you relatively high on?
A guy I loved I've been talking about this Buffalo Miami game. Like I don't know why I like it so much. It's Buffalo and Miami, but Mike Gaseki looks like he might be actually starting to break out a little bit. And I mean, he made some really athletic catches for Ryan Fitzpatrick. We know that Fitz against the Jaguars on Thursday night is probably going to have to be throwing the ball a little bit. Decent chance that they're in a positive game script if the Jaguars get a lead and James Robinson's running the ball and then they're throwing to Gaseki. They tend to throw a lot against Buffalo and were successful. I think Gaseki could have another big week this week.
Sean, what about you?
So I think in DFS, I think I'm going to be spending up at quarterback. I'm going to be spending up at wide receiver, going to be spending up at running back. So I think this week, especially Logan Thomas at 3,700. I mean, he just has an insanely high floor at that price. He ran around 95% of the dropbacks last week, leads the team in targets to 17. That's one more than Terry. So I just think given his high floor, you got to take him at that price. And the other guy, this is going to make Raybon so happy, is Dan freaking Arnold.
Oh my God.
2,800. Okay?
Welcome, Sean. Thomas and Arnold. I love it.
Like I said before the season started, if you want 2 catches for 20 yards, Dan Arnold is your guy. But, Max Williams was out last week. He might miss again this week. So Dan Arnold's routes run spiked up to 72% last week. That should continue. If defenses start to really key in on DeAndre Hopkins, which I think it's probably a good idea, Dan Arnold could be one of the guys that benefits, especially at home against the Lions. So I think just if you're going to take a cheap flyer at tight end, Dan Arnold is the man this week.
Okay, and Williams is definitely out this week. He was just placed on IR. So, Raybon, who are you relatively high on?
Yeah, I've got to run it back with that Logan Thomas call. I mean, not only is Logan Thomas playing more than pretty much any tight end has over the past couple of years, like you usually see the top tight end top out at like 85% of the routes, and Thomas is pretty much in there every snap. But the Browns, the opponent this week for the football team, allowing the most points in the NFL to the tight end position. Now that's a very kind of noisy stat, so you don't want to read too much into it. And they did face Mark Andrews, but they also faced CJ Usama and Drew Sample, and they combined for 11 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown. So the strength of schedule with Mark Andrews did them a favor, 5 for 58 and 2 scores, but they gave up essentially the same type of line to 2 of the worst tight ends in the league. Logan Thomas, love him this week in all formats.
Yeah, totally agree there. There are a lot of guys who are injured for the Cleveland Browns, just in terms of like their secondary and linebacker core. So the guys who would normally be defending the tight end just aren't there. Jonnu Smith for me is a guy that I'm really high on. He's getting more targets than I think he normally would be with AJ Brown out. So as long as Brown is out and or hampered, I think Smith is someone I'm going to continue to be interested in, and he's been highly efficient this year, but it's nothing new. Like he's always been highly efficient. He's, got 10 yards per target this year. He had 10 yards per target last year. So he's basically continuing to do Jonnu Smith things. It's just now that he's getting more targets. And as long as he continues to see that volume, he's someone I'm going to be extremely invested in. Will, who are you low on?
I think I'll be low on the Eagles tight ends this week with Ertz and Dallas Goedert. And that's not because they're not great and they could end up making me look like a fool because the Bengals defense is awful. But as Sean alluded to it, I think we see a real Miles Sanders game here. And as good as Carson Wentz can be, maybe throwing the ball to his tight ends, if you're going to play one of those guys, you really sort of want – and maybe it's going to be a shootout. Maybe the Eagles defense plays awful, but I don't know that I trust either one of those guys. And the other guy that I would say is I don't know if I love Hayden Hurst this week. I feel like his touchdown might have been a little fluky.
Sean, who are you low on?
I'm low on Tyler Higby this week. Although at Buffalo is not a bad matchup, but he's 5,900. He's coming off the monster 3-touchdown game. He's never really been a touchdown guy, so I'll want to see that extend beyond 1 week. But I'm just fading him at this price just because his routes run per dropback actually dipped to 53%. Gerald Everett really didn't do anything in his 23% of snaps, but still, he's getting some usage. So I think Higby is going to have to maintain this like extreme efficiency just to keep this up. So I'm fading him this week. Again, if you're in season long, he's still my tight end 9. You're still playing him, but I would definitely lower expectations, and he should not be close to 6K this week. I think he's going to be over-owned based off that 3-touchdown game, but I think he's due for some pretty significant regression this week.
Rayvon, what about you?
Yeah, I agree on Higby. I think if you look at Higby, I think Buffalo's actually the worst matchup for tight ends. The last 2 years, they've been top 3 in yards allowed. They gave up a big game to Mike Gaseki. Why? Because Mike Gaseki ran 26 of his 32 routes in the slot. So he wasn't really a tight end at all against Buffalo. And I think Higby's going to play a little bit more in line because they aren't using Everett a ton. They still want to get Cooper Kupp lined up in the slot. They're using him every snap. So I do think this is actually a bad spot for Higby, and I'd be concerned all year about using tight ends against Buffalo despite that big game from Michael Gaseki.
Yeah, and just kind of piggybacking on that, I think I'm relatively low on Gaseki this week, in part just because I could see sort of massive overreaction in the market to what he did last week. Okay, Sean, give us the prop for tight ends.
So I'm going to stick with Tyler Higby. So his receiving yards, I have it at 50.5.
I'll take the under on anything in that game. I think. I just think Rams Bills is going to be like 17-14, and people are like, man, that would be very explosive.
Sean, you said, I'm sorry, Rayvon, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I got him 5 yards under. I think coming into the year, kind of the consensus projection was around 45, 46 yards per game. That's where I have him. So under.
Sean, you said 50.5?
Yeah.
I have it at 51. But I'm going to take the under just to have lopsided action here.
Yeah. All right. Now I need him to go over, even though I'm fading him.